Stage 31, the Ablative Absolute. It's used all the time. It's really, really important. So what in the world is it? First things first, definition. It describes the general circumstances that are taking place when an action occurs. And it's a way of putting sort of two sentences into one. Let's take a look at these English examples, some of which we covered in class earlier. So, all things considered, you are a pretty good soccer player. With that said, you still need to work hard. If you'll notice, these words in boldface are a sort of absolute, English absolute. These are sort of things that can be taken out of the sentence, and the rest of the sentence would make sense, of course, but they do provide some additional circumstances or sometimes even like a time frame for another action that's occurring. Ablatives absolute, just like these in English, these English examples, they're sort of grammatically separate from the rest of the sentence. In fact, the word absolute comes from a Latin word, ab plus solvo solere, to sort of loosen away from or even like to free. They're sort of free grammatically from the rest of the sentence. But they're used all the time to provide more context, more circumstances. So let's take a look. How do you recognize an ablative absolute? Well, it's really easy. You've got a noun in the ablative case plus a participle in the ablative case, and they are often found at the very beginning or toward the beginning of a Latin sentence. So I know some of you are like, oh God, participles. I sort of remember those from last year. So what in the world is a participle? Let's review really quickly. A participle is an adjective that is formed from a verb. Remember that participles in Latin, they're sort of like the mullets of Latin because they are verby in the front and nouny in the back. They look like a verb in the front, but they have noun endings. And you learned three types last year. The first you learned was called the present active participle, and that's formed from the present stem. And then you add an ns for nominative singular, for example, ambulans, or an nt plus a third declension ending for all the other cases. For example, ambulantem would be accusative singular, and they're always translated as verbing, so walking. So that's the first type of participle that we learned last year. The second type of participle is called the perfect passive participle. That's the fourth part of a verb. It has first and second declension endings. It's always translated as having been verbs. So for example, look at this sentence. Faber ab architecto laudatus laetissimus erat. The craftsman, having been praised by the architect, was very happy. And then you learned what's called a participle from a deponent verb. Now these are a little tricky because they look like perfect passive participles, but they're translated actively. They also have first and second declension endings, but they're translated having verbs. So how do you recognize a participle from a deponent verb? Well, you have a list in your Gram notes from last year, the replicas list. So please go back and re-familiarize yourself with that. For example, we have the sentence senex deam precatus abiit. The old man, having prayed to the goddess, went away. So now that we've reviewed participles, let's take a look at the different kinds of ablatives, absolute combinations that we can have. So the first is we have a noun in the ablative plus a present active participle in the ablative. And the most literal translation of this kind of ablative absolute would be with the noun verbing. Let's take a look at some examples. Omnibus tacentibus libertus nomina recitavit. So check it out. You've got ablative words at the very beginning of a sentence, and one of them appears to be a participle. See the nt there, present. So with everyone being quiet, the freedman recited the names. Check out this one, custodibus dormientibus captivi effugerunt. So we have a noun here, custodibus, and we have a present participle, dormientibus, beginning of the sentence, ablative absolute, with the guards sleeping, comma, the prisoners escaped. All right, so the second combination that we can have would be a noun in the ablative plus a perfect passive participle in the ablative. And the most literal translation of that is with the noun having been verbed. Let's take a look at some examples. Rege interfecto Tarquinius superbus erat laetissimus. So with the king having been killed, Tarquinius the superbus was very happy. How about this one? Hoc sententia dicta senator sedit. Again, a bunch of ablative words at the beginning of the sentence. There's no preposition. It's going to be an ablative absolute. Dicta is a perfect passive participle coming from dico, dicere, to say. So with this opinion having been said, the senator sat down. And then here's one from more recent stages. Arcu dedicato cives domum redierunt. So ablative noun, ablative perfect passive participle, beginning of the sentence, with the arch having been dedicated, the citizens returned home. Not much to it. Now let's take a look at our third possible combination for an ablative absolute, and that would be, you guessed it, a noun in the ablative case plus a deponent participle in the ablative case, and the translation here would be with the noun having verb. Examples in Latin: domino egresso, grumio bibere coepit. Sorry, I had to bring grumio back just for this one sentence. So with the master having gone out, grumio began to drink. Nuntiis a Britannia regressis imperator senatores arcesivit. With the messengers having returned from Britain, the emperor summoned the senators. Once again, you see these are ablative words toward the beginning of the sentence, and you've got the R and the E and replicas. So please go back and check those out. Now, an ablative absolute can also appear in two other ways. Sometimes you can have two nouns back to back in the ablative that are translated as with noun as noun, which maybe sounds crazy, but check out the sentence: Caesare duce milites nihil tement. So with Caesar as the leader, the soldiers fear nothing. So sometimes you will see, again, these are lesser used, ablative absolute, but sometimes you'll see that, two nouns back to back, or sometimes you'll see a noun in the ablative plus an adjective in the ablative, and it's with the noun being adjective. I know that sounds confusing, but check this out. You've had this famous phrase before, ceteris paribus, plus it's a term you're going to learn in econ, with the all other things being equal. That is another example of an ablative absolute. So look for ablative words at the beginning of a sentence, and usually it's going to be a noun plus a participle. Okay, that's it.